The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked coats. I sat in a wheelchair wearing a thin hospital gown, one sleeve stained with dried blood near the shoulder. My lip was split. My left side burned every time I breathed. The nurse pushing me toward the discharge bay kept her eyes forward, quiet in the way people get when they know you're trying not to fall apart. "Do you have someone coming to get you?" she asked gently. I looked down at my phone. "I think so." But even as I said it, I already knew the answer. 10 minutes earlier, I had sent one message to the family group chat: "Need a ride from the ER." I even attached a picture of my hospital wristband, thinking maybe seeing it would make the situation feel real to them. 6 minutes later, my sister replied, "We're at Bottomless Brunch, just order an Uber." That was it. No concern, no, "Are you okay?" Just a laughing emoji floating beneath my bruised face like my pain had interrupted her Saturday plans. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then I typed back 2 words. "Will do." No argument, no guilt trip, no begging. Because deep down, I already understood something I had spent years trying not to admit. My family only showed up when it was convenient. Outside the hospital, the evening air hit hard against my skin. I sat alone on a bench waiting for the Uber app to stop spinning while people passed by with flowers, overnight bags, and worried expressions meant for someone they loved. I watched them quietly and thought, what does it feel like to matter that much to someone? The painkillers wore off halfway through the ride home. By the time I made it into my apartment, every breath felt sharp. My shoulder throbbed. My vision blurred whenever I stood too quickly. Still, I told myself I'd be okay. The hospital said no broken bones. Just bruises. I took off my shoes, dropped the discharge papers on the kitchen counter, and tried to make it to the bathroom. I never got there. At 11:14 p.m., my sister's phone rang. She answered laughing, still surrounded by brunch photos and half-finished cocktails from a day that apparently mattered more than I did. The voice on the other end belonged to a police officer. "Are you listed as the emergency contact for him?" Her smile disappeared. "Yes," she said slowly. Then came the sentence that turned the room silent. "He stopped breathing 12 minutes ago." Later, she told me she dropped the phone right there between 2 untouched mimosa glasses. Not because she suddenly cared, because for the first time, the consequences became real. The EMTs found me unconscious on the bathroom floor. Internal bleeding. The kind that doesn't always scream loud enough for people to notice until it's almost too late. One medic later told me I had probably been deteriorating for hours after leaving the hospital. I flatlined once in the ambulance, then again briefly in the ER, and somehow, I came back. When I finally woke up in the ICU, the lights were dim and my throat felt raw from oxygen tubes. My sister was sitting beside the bed, mascara smudged, hands shaking. She looked like someone trying desperately to rewind time. "Why didn't you tell me it was serious?" she whispered. I stared at the ceiling for a long moment before answering. "You told me to call an Uber." She flinched, but I didn't stop there. Uber doesn't sit in an ICU waiting room all night. The silence after that was heavy. Not dramatic, not explosive, just painfully honest. Because this wasn't really about brunch, it was about years. Years of small dismissals. Years of being the reliable sibling who was expected to understand, forgive, and wait patiently for scraps of attention. My pain had always been treated like background noise, and now, suddenly, everyone wanted to care because someone in uniform had said the words he stopped breathing. The next morning, she brought me coffee. The wrong order, hazelnut, no sugar. I hadn't drank coffee like that in 3 years, but somehow that tiny mistake hurt more than it should have, because it proved something heartbreaking. She didn't really know me, not anymore. Maybe she never had. By afternoon, the rest of my family arrived carrying flowers and awkward excuses. We didn't realize it was that bad. You should have told us more clearly. Next time, give us more details. Next time. As if medical emergencies come with warning labels. As if near-death experiences are scheduling conflicts that could have been communicated better. I nodded politely through all of it, but emotionally, something had already detached inside me. That night, after everyone left, I asked the nurse to remove my family from visitor approval temporarily. She didn't ask questions, she just nodded softly like she understood. Then I did something unexpected. I sent a message to Officer Harris, the police officer who had made the emergency call to my sister after the paramedics identified me. I found his name in the hospital paperwork and typed slowly. "Thank you for acting faster than the people who were supposed to love me." 3 hours later, he replied, "No one should ever feel alone in an emergency." I read that message twice, because somehow, a stranger had shown me more compassion in one sentence than my family had shown me all week. I was discharged again on a Tuesday. This time, my sister offered to drive me home. I said no. Officer Harris picked me up instead. The ride was quiet, comfortable. No forced apologies, no guilt, no performance. At one point, he simply asked, "You got food at home?" That was it. And somehow, that small question nearly broke me. Because care doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. Sometimes it's just someone noticing your pain without needing to be asked. When I got home, I started cleaning. Not just the apartment, my life. I left the family group chat without explanation, boxed up old photos, archived conversations, muted numbers. Then, one night, I wrote something, not out of revenge, out of clarity, an anonymous essay for a local community blog titled, "The Day My Emergency Contact Chose Brunch." I told the story simply, the hospital, the text, the Uber, the collapse, the silence, and I ended it with one sentence. Sometimes the people who save your life are strangers because the people who know you best stopped listening a long time ago. By morning, it had gone viral. Thousands of comments. People sharing their own stories about neglect, loneliness, abandonment, and healing. One message hit me especially hard. I thought I was the only person whose family treated emergencies like inconveniences. I sat staring at that comment for a long time. Because pain isolates you until someone else finally says, "Me too." My sister called repeatedly after the article spread. Then came the voicemail, crying, apologizing, saying she never meant for any of this to happen. But intent and impact are not the same thing. She didn't intend to hurt me. She just didn't think about me at all. And honestly, that hurt more. A week later, she showed up at my apartment carrying my favorite sandwich and an apology card. When I opened the door, she looked exhausted. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. I looked at the sandwich. Wrong bread, wrong sauce, still not quite right. "You already said enough," I replied quietly. "At brunch." I took the food, left the card outside, closed the door gently. Not cruelly, just finally. A few days later, she posted a public apology online, long paragraphs about regret, perspective, and family. People praised her honesty, others criticized her. I stayed silent, because this wasn't about humiliating her, it was about surviving something that changed me permanently. Shortly after, I updated my emergency contact information. Not to my sister, not to anyone in my family, to Officer Harris. I texted him first. "Hope that's okay." His response came instantly. "Of course. I've got your 6. Simple. Steady. Reliable. Everything I had spent years wishing my own family could be. Months passed. I moved cities, started working with a nonprofit that supports people navigating family estrangement and medical recovery. One evening, I was invited to speak at a local community event about emotional neglect and healing. I almost declined. Then I remembered sitting outside the hospital alone wondering if anyone would come, so I said yes. Standing behind that microphone, I looked out at a room full of strangers carrying invisible wounds, and I said the thing I wished someone had told me years ago. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes family is the person who answers when everyone else thinks your pain is inconvenient. Some people cried. Others nodded silently. Afterward, a woman hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for saying what I've never been brave enough to admit." That night, my sister sent one final text. "You embarrassed me publicly." I stared at it for a moment before replying, "You ignored me privately." She never answered, and honestly, that felt like closure. Today, I don't hate my family. Hate takes energy. And healing taught me to stop spending energy on people who only notice your value once they're afraid of losing you. What happened to me changed everything. Not because I almost died, but because surviving forced me to finally ask myself a difficult question. Why was I working so hard to stay connected to people who disappeared the moment life became inconvenient? Now, when my phone rings, I answer people who answer me back. I build relationships rooted in consistency instead of obligation. And I no longer confuse shared history with unconditional love. Because the truth is, some betrayals don't come with screaming or cruelty. Sometimes they arrive quietly, in the form of a laughing emoji beneath a hospital wristband. And sometimes healing begins the moment you stop waiting for those people to become who you needed them to be.